Welcome into your regularly scheduled Kickin' It. I say regularly scheduled because if you are interested, we interviewed the Bear, Chris Felica from Big Fox. Used to be on College Game Day, now is on Big Noon Kickoff for Fox, which they're not coming to Iowa State, Texas for some reason. We got into that a little bit. Anyway, go back and listen to that episode that came out earlier this week. So we are going to be talking with our, like I said, regularly scheduled Kickin' It. We're recapping BYU, previewing Texas. It's going to be a fun week. Anyway, Kickin' It is brought to you by Kelderman Manufacturing. As always, if you're looking for really anything that you need to get done with large metal work, Kelderman's got you. Whether that's laser cutting, whether that's bending something, whether that's fabricating something, whether that's fixing something, agricultural products, they got you. Big Cyclone fans. So anyway, Iowa State whips the shit out of BYU this weekend at like midnight. And for those that got to stay awake for it, either you paid for it on Sunday or you slept through it on Sunday. 45-13, Iowa State wins. They head into a, let's call it a excited week where they host Texas. So Grant Mahoney, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Yeah. Watching that BYU game live, I'm thinking, man, these guys stink. We could have dropped, Iowa State could have dropped 60 on them.
Like, I want to be nice because, again, we have been on teams. Me more than you. I mean,
well, and not only do you want to be nice, I heard that after the first quarter in Provo, their fans were passing out homemade brownies and ice cream to the Iowa State fans.
What? So, like, legitimately?
How can you not like someone like that?
I made this, we were texting kind of during the game, and one of the things, like, it seems really hard to dislike BYU unless, you know, they're, say, the basketball fans seem like it's a little bit different crowd, but, like, the football program, it seems like there was, I don't remember what, I think it was maybe Higgins got tackled on the sideline, and like one of the guys, I was on the BYU sideline, one of the BYU players that just wasn't even in, like picked him up and gave him like a couple pats in the back, like, good job, buddy. Like, they just seem like they're nice people. They need a better football team, but I think that will come in a few years because that stadium looks cool, university's really strong, but boy, that was not an even matchup.
Yeah, I feel like kind of a side tangent. I feel like Andrew Luck would have been good playing there. Have you heard about him? Like his trash
Dude,
talk.
I
in the
did
NFL?
that. I did that. So
What?
the trash talk, the trash talk in the NFL. So Andrew Luck's trash talk is he would compliment them like instantly. Someone,
Ooh, really nice hit, man.
Great tackle, man. And he would do that. But like, there's sometimes I would like shit talk back and forth with somebody. But like, if someone's a really big trash talker, and like, you know, I was, Grant, 2 thumbs and big trash talker, this guy. But like, you know, a guy like, you know, Jeremiah George or Jacquez Washington, when you're in practice, it's not that you're seeing him every day. But if it's like some other team, you know, somebody from Oklahoma, and it's a linebacker and they're talking trash or whatever, and they're like, I would usually get, it's called some combination of fat, slow, or white. Like, those are the 3 combinations that I was going to get, which are all true relative to the position.
You're not fat, Jeff.
I mean, I was, especially in the later years. I mean, like, I'm pushing 255. And anyway, but if you make good contact and they come up and say, like, hey, slow ass, and I'd be like, great hit, man. Like, what do you say back to that? Yeah, it was a great hit. Like, it's what I just said. So
Yeah,
like,
no, not-
it instantly, like,
not
it
me,
turns
Jeff.
the trash talk off.
Not me. So on kickoffs, I would look for a dude away from the play. Just, you know, I've got my testosterone just amped up. I'm juiced up. You know, he brought this kickoff back. I'm looking to earhole someone. There was one year we were playing Kansas State. This dude, I'm sure he's a nice fella. Just watching the plays and unfold. Boom! I just decleat him, stared him. You know, standing over top of him. Tell him, get your weight up, bitch. And when you hear that from a kicker who's weighing 160 pounds, you know, what do you say? I'll tell you what he says. The very next kickoff, they are returning it back. This guy's a lead blocker, and I can see him. He's making eye contact with me running, and I hear him say, "I'm coming for you, motherfucker." This guy lifts me up and tosses me on the sideline. I'm thinking, okay. Yeah, you win. Okay, I'm not gonna try to earhole you. Welcome into Kickin' It.
Grant Scribes.
So,
Oh, sorry, I can't. All right, I don't know how
I was proud of myself. This guy was a linebacker, so like he was.
I mean, he wasn't looking at you. He wasn't looking at you.
He was making eye. No, when I decleated him, no, he was absolutely. His head was to the right. I was coming to the left. Earholed him, stand over top, and get your weight up, bitch. And he weighed 50 pounds more than me. I mean, he was strong enough to lift and toss me.
To be fair, not that hard.
No.
All things considered, not that hard. I don't know how you possibly transition out of that. I mean, we can talk about. I mean, we can just, while we're talking about things that are absurd. I didn't get to watch I'm trying to make this a professional podcast, Grant. I was
Things are absurd. BYU's punter, dude's a stud.
Great. I was going the other way.
You go.
I didn't get to watch because I was watching just in the big ESPN. I didn't kick over to ESPN Plus or whatever. So I didn't get to see the first two plays, which were fumble, interception. Aiden, would you like to describe your emotions watching the first couple plays? Because you did tune into the ESPN Plus broadcast.
Yeah, I was on the Plus. So actually, maybe it was just my TV. Maybe I had bad luck. But I didn't even see the first play live. I saw the replay of the opening kickoff. I was like, oh, maybe Iowa State got the ball. Well, they didn't.
I thought so too. When I turned it on, I thought, oh, he wants to receive the ball.
So I went, oh, nuts. Now Iowa State has to trot out the defense and get a stop. Well, that didn't take long.
Lo and behold, that happened.
It was unreal just how bad that start was for BYU.
I was surprised too by how often they were slipping on their home field.
Yeah,
that field looked like a high school field.
That grass was like 7 inches long. I mean, maybe it's just like a watering thing in the desert and there's like water conservation. I don't know. Or I mean, Iowa State turf grass needs to kind of, we'll show them a what's what. But I mean, in the Kansas game, players are slipping at Jack Trice too. So it's not. I mean, they might also just need to get like don't get the molded cleats. Use the screw-ins. They're better.
Well, so I had heard Jake Hatch. We had him on last week for the BYU podcast. I want to hear his thoughts on after the game. And if you want to listen to someone bitch about it, he's given up on the season. He's saying we're done. Pack it in. We're done. We're going to go 5-7. He was saying that he's like, from the start, we sucked. The fumbled, interception, fumbled. He goes, and the equipment staff couldn't even bring the right cleats. So it sounds like they have two different cleats, which I don't know.
Yeah, you do. You have kickers use soccer cleats.
How nice.
So you use soccer. You don't want to use.
I had to buy my
cleats.
own cleats, Jeff.
Really?
Yeah, they gave us these Geyer Warm. I didn't have to, but they gave us these black, teal, and orange cleats. And I was like, what is this? These are not Iowa State colors. And I was like, okay, if I buy my own cleats, will you reimburse me? And they said no.
So
I was all right. Anyway. I said, screw it, I'm going to buy them anyways. And so, yeah.
So this is completely irrelevant. So you get two cleats, and usually I would just call them turf cleats and grass cleats because you'd use them in different situations. One is that's molded and screw-ins are the ones you want. So when you look at the bottom, there's 7 or 9 spikes depending on the style of shoe that you have in the screw-ins, and it's the ones. There's literally like it's like a screw that has a cleat at the bottom of it, and you screw those in, and they're usually a bit heavier, but the spikes themselves are longer, and those are really good on grass because it can puncture and penetrate through the grass into the dirt. Versus the molded ones is when you pick up the bottom of a molded cleats, it's just it's literally a plastic mold they like glued onto the bottom of the shoe. Well, there's like 20 little tiny smaller spikes. Those are really good for turf because there's not as much grass that you're pushing through, so you don't need longer spikes. So I would always bring 2 because I wasn't sure which, if we were going on the road, I would just bring both and just put them in the little travel bag because I didn't know if it was turf. Maybe it's like sometimes it's brand new turf and you actually don't really want those molded ones because they slide around because it's all super rubbery. So you get the molded ones. And I don't know I'm guessing what BYU did is they just all had the molded cleats. They didn't have the screw-ins. And so there would be times when like you'd have a really rough game, a really rough warm up, and you think that you're wearing the moldeds and you're like, grass is short and we're good. Or like at Oklahoma, like they would always cut the grass really short. Well, you go out there and maybe it's really sandy and you're like, I need the longer ones. You just change when you get inside. But you're at home. Like, why do you not have both?
Right. And that's what I was just going to say, too, that if you notice in warm-ups, like you guys are slipping or, I don't know, first quarter you guys are slipping.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe change out of cleats.
Yeah. So, or you can just go ask an equipment manager. There's like 17 assistant equipment managers. You go, so, hey, can you go to my locker and grab me, maybe the practice facility's not by the stadium, but like, I don't know. You know who else? Who did have a good game, though?
The Iowa State Cyclones.
The Iowa State Cyclones. I thought this was...
Abu Sama, baby.
Go Rams. State championship contending Southeast Polk Rams and Abu Sama. But I think the thing that was cool to see about the offense itself, they were that was the most efficient that they've been.
Scheelhaase is out there cooking, man. Scheelhaase is a star.
100%. They were most in the situations when they needed to come up with a play is so here, let me take back a step for a second. Against Kansas, they were bad on third down in the first half because they were always third and 8, 9, 10, 11. This game, most of their third downs were third and shorts. They had an occasional third and long. I think there was 2 third downs that were longer than 8 or 9 yards. One of them, they ran a tunnel screen to Bramer, which is beautiful.
I love that play call.
Dude, okay, if
I
you
had
want
to rewind and go watch it. I was like, what happened there? That
so
was cool.
go back, and if you want to go back and rewatch it, they run a swing screen to Carson Hansen. He's in the backfield. And so what the normal screen look is you're either going to run a tunnel screen, which is somebody coming back towards the ball. So like from a wide receiver position, running back towards the offensive line. Those are called tunnel screens. Or there's a swing screen, which is somebody in the backfield running sideways, whether it's somebody in like a jet motion or whatever. So they run the common ones you're going to see. And also on a tunnel screen, the common people that are going to be doing that tunnel screen are going to be the widest receiver or the second widest receiver, because it has to time up right. Like if the middle guy, the inside receiver, tries to run a tunnel screen, he's going to get there too fast, and he's just going to have to like stand there and be like, hey, throw me the ball. Unless you can somehow manage to time it out. Well, in order to time it out, you have to distract the defense at least a little bit so the linebackers don't just sit down on that guy. So they run a swing screen to the left. They also know that BYU is playing man, and so instead of trying to block on a screen with Higgins and Knoll on the top side, they just run them off, because that means the guy who's playing man over top of him just runs with him, and then Bramer gets to run back. And because they're running a swing screen and there's linemen moving and there's guys running vertical, the linebackers get lost, and then you can just tuck in behind a lineman. I mean, that is a beautiful third and long call, but you don't have to call 4 of those. You have 1 or 2 third and longs that you have to deal with. You're not calling a zillion of them. So they're able to stay in front of the chains. And then Rocco understanding when to run and where to get to, making smart tuck it down and run decisions. I mean, in the second quarter, they were 5 for 5 on third down. In the first half, they were 6 for 8 on third down as compared to BYU's 1 for 5. Like, granted, BYU also only had 6 passing yards in the entire first half. So it's not like it was other things, but they were so efficient on offense that they were always in the right spot. They were always ahead of the chains, which set them up to do everything else in the offense they wanted to.
Dude, I'm super impressed by Rocco. I mean, he still is a freshman. He's not playing at a freshman level. And I was texting my buddy during the game, and he was like, man, I'm kind of worried. Like, this atmosphere might get to Rocco early in the game. And then Rocco, I don't know what the play was, but he had run for a first down. He went through his progressions and ran and got the first down. And I texted him back. I said, no, we're good. Like, Rocco's settling in. That might have been his best game.
Well, if you go from the back half of the Kansas game into the first half of the BYU game,
the first half of Kansas was rough, but then from then on,
but the second half of the Kansas game and the first half of the BYU game, Iowa State scored on 11 of 14 possessions.
That's pretty good.
Not bad.
Yeah.
So if you're taking that, and now I think the other thing that, like, Abu Sama being able to be a change of pace back because you're in rhythm allows him to be his best, because like he's still one of the things when you watch those runs, they are unbelievable. You can't teach it. You cannot teach. Like it was funny that the one drive that was like the Abu Sama drive where he just made like 4 guys miss. Number 33 is a strong safety, was fit. He was the guy that he made look stupid twice. Like those plays are just instinct plays. If he can ever start putting it together where he knows actually how to set someone up, like Brees, like Montgomery, like even like you look at Eli Sanders, like if he can kind of figure it out where guys want to go, how they want to set, where they're trying to fit, then I think he's going to be the every down back next year, because if he can put that together. But at least to this point, he's kind of sometimes bounces it or cuts it back too soon, versus Eli Sanders. Sanders is much less likely to get you a 70-yard touchdown, or he's much less likely to take a 0-yard run and turn it into 15, but he's much more likely to have a poor run be 5 yards. Versus Sama's poor runs are -3. So right now, Sanders and Norton are much more consistent in the running game to keep you on schedule. But then when you want to throw this changeup or this curveball, you bring in Sama and he just goes to town. I mean, that is basically what Iowa State's entire team, offense, defense, special teams is meant to do. It's that game.
Yeah, and he's the one of the 3 backs I'm thinking. Really 4 if you want to toss Hansen there, who's probably got the most wiggle.
I mean, Hansen's got some shake. He's not confident yet with the running game.
And it's unfair to, compare Rocco to Brock. Brock is the best quarterback Iowa State's ever had. But statistically, I think Rocco is going to have a better freshman year than Brock did. It's also unfair to compare Abu Sama to Brees Hall, who is maybe the greatest quarterback or running back that Iowa State's ever had.
Troy Davis is pretty good.
Yeah. But I think Abu Sama is the closest thing to Brees Hall that we've had since Brees left.
I mean, it's been like 2 years, so it's not like there's been a huge sample size.
Well,
so I don't know if there's too much meat to pick off the bone more for BYU.
That was way past my bedtime, dude. I was prying my eyes open trying to stay awake. I was like, guys, it's 11:30. Iowa State is just kicking the dog shit out of BYU. Let's just run the ball. It's past my bedtime, man. I got an early appointment in the morning.
And they did.
They did.
They absolutely did.
I want to ask you about Hughes. What was up with that? Why do you think Iowa State brought him in just for 2 plays and just ran the ball? One of them looked like kind of a botched play.
I think they were looking at, in a certain point, you want to try and see if something's going to work. And you can't test if something's going to work against your defense in practice because they would have seen Tanner Hughes in practice. So you're not catching anybody off guard. But they had mentioned early at the beginning of the season, like before the season started, they want to get, he's a big dude. He's 6'3", 230, 240. So they want to get him some packages where you can do some short yardage stuff or, the Joel Dozer style things. Well, there hasn't really been a situation where you could maybe make that happen. Well, you're up 31-7 or whatever it was, 38-7 or 38-13, and you're just whooping the shit out of a team. And your starters are still in the game. You can still kind of get a look with what that's going to be. And then the next drive, you're going to pull Rocco, you're going to pull Hughes, you're going to put JJ in. It gives you a chance with your starters, with a change of pace, to see how a defense would react to it, to see if it's something you want to keep for later. So that was straight up experiment.
Some breadcrumbs.
100% straight up experiment. And so they're going to see, does this work? We've got 3 or 4 plays that have looked pretty good in practice. We think you can, run or throw out of this. Let's see what it looks like. All right, next drive, get everybody out. Put the backups in, get JJ Cole some reps. So
interesting tidbit on Hughes and Jake Retzlaff, their quarterback. So Jake Hatch, the guy we had on last week, had said, "Oh, Retzlaff was the number one JUCO quarterback." Well, I went and looked, see, what offers did he have from? He lied to us. He was, well, I guess some places he might have been the number one quarterback, but Tanner Hughes was the number one JUCO quarterback, and then Jake Retzlaff.
Heyo.
Looks like they maybe could have used Hughes out there, or maybe even Slovis, or just, I don't know.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Me? Maybe.
Zach Wilson.
I mean, Retzlaff actually played okay.
Blake Groupie?
The Blake Groupie. That first interception wasn't great, and he was only 10 for 27 passing. But he was
for his second true
his
game.
second game against this really confusing defense. But I talked about picking meat off the bone. You know where you can pick meat off the bone? Dino Sports Bar and Grill.
Oh, that's not where I was going to go, but continue.
So if you're on Saturday, if you don't go up to Texas, at Dino Sports Bar and Grill in West Des Moines, you can get 8 wings and a domestic beer for $10, and you can watch some college football. It's going to be a nice day, but if you aren't able to get up to Ames, or if you want to watch another different Saturday, want to watch some other football, Dino Sports Bar and Grill. So they're getting on the Cyclone Fanatic bandwagon, so I'm going to have to go get me some wings and
you may not be able to answer this question, but do their wings come with celery, carrots, and or fries?
I hope so.
Oof.
I hope so. I don't know. We'll have to do some investigating.
Okay, I'm in.
Okay.
Do hidden yards?
We're going to do hidden yardage. So hidden yards. Iowa State, good special teams day. Real good special teams day. Except, what the hell, Shackford? Just ripped one out of bounds on a kickoff.
Yeah, I don't get that.
That was the one downside. I think everything else. And I will say, though, Perkins, it was on the first extra point, I think, or was the field goal? First extra point or the field goal.
It was on the extra point. Talking about the one where he
so the snap had to
kind
of like pick a short hop, but Perkins had a great hold on that one, another kick. But I mean, otherwise, if we're talking about our special teams goal execution, I mean, you might give a ding for that snap and that kick out of bounds. So we might not be 100%, but we'll call it a win because make all of our kicks and execute all of our punts.
The kickoff did not end up costing Iowa State, but that's one of those ones where if you just let that, it's not going to affect us, and not hammer it home that, hey, this is an issue in a game like last week.
Did he just pull it?
Yeah, I didn't see. Usually he's a left-footed guy, and kicking left-footed, it went out of bounds to the right. So I'm assuming he just came around on it. Yeah, pulled a little bit. If you want to get technical, he may not have had his kickoffs are different than field goals. In that kickoffs, you get your quad involved, and so you really want to roll your knee over. Well, he might have rolled his knee over and kind of hooked his foot
A little bit too far.
A little too far. Whereas field goals, it's not quite as quad involved. A little more butt involved.
Talking about butts. Okay, so hidden yardage, again, refresher, is the distance between where each team starts. So if I want to get to the 25-yard line and you're starting at the 25-yard line, how far do I have to get to the 25-yard line? So then we are starting at an even spot. So total that up throughout the rest of the game, and there's your hidden yardage. So hidden yardage, what do you think the hidden yardage total was? Let's just say in advantage of Iowa State because it was true.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that I'm really impressed by their punter. He'll be first team all Big 12.
Absolutely boomed it.
Yeah, I think Perkins
Boy.
will be second team All Big 12, but their guy, yeah, Jake wasn't under. He built like a D end. Booming punts though, and I didn't look like they were win aided either. He was just hitting nukes.
So
Yeah, hidden yardage. I'm gonna say that Iowa State. I mean, dude, BYU was so bad. I don't even know where to start with this. I'm gonna say Iowa State had an advantage by 143.
Aiden?
I was gonna say 150, so I'll stick with it.
Less than you think, 108. So it's weird because they got the ball. They started inside the 25-yard line twice, and then Jalen Knoll had another big return, but that big return started on the 0.
That's not that surprising because their punter
was so good.
He put Iowa State back so far.
Yeah, so there was a couple drives where they started way far in, but a lot of the other drives started super far back. So they won hidden yards by 108 yards. So
and Iowa State had 443 yards on the day.
Yeah, so they had to. So you add, what it would be. You can subtract 108 from BYU's total because that's just what they had to do to get to where Iowa State was. So what would that be the yardage distance wise? So 443 for Iowa State and
BYU had 318.
So minus 108 would be 210.
210. Yeah.
So they had 210 yards of basically functioning offense.
And only 6 passing yards at halftime.
Yeah, it's 6 passing yards at halftime.
I just want to reemphasize that.
They had 2 sacks for -9 yards. So on plays that were called as passes, net -3 yards at halftime.
You would have thought Brian Ferentz snuck into their press box. Boom! Shot at Iowa.
Ducks. So we got ourselves a little Texas fight, eh? Yeah.
I'm gonna do this now before he gets on. Saw him off. So we will. We're gonna welcome in Eric Henry here of Horns 247 and CBS Sports. He writes. He's a beat writer for both. I'm gonna talk a little Longhorns football. And now we welcome in Eric Henry of Horns 247 and CBS Sports, beat writer for both of them, covering University of Texas athletics. Eric, thanks for joining us today.
Not a problem, fellas. Appreciate you guys having me on.
So Texas is they're in the driver's seat right now. For the Big 12 and Big 12 championship game, and obviously atop the conference. What's kind of the feeling in the locker room right now? Are they kind of letting up, knowing that they basically are a shoe-in into the championship game, or are they still pedal to the floor?
Let me answer that 2 ways, guys. The feeling in the locker room is not letting up at all. I mean, really, this is a group that has experienced the 5 and 7 year under Steve Sarkisian and experienced, some of the letdowns prior to that. So when you talk with some of the veterans, whether it's Jalen Ford or Jahdae Barron or others, the message has been consistent all the way through. Every week is a championship week. I mean, that is verbatim what they've been saying. So there hasn't been any real let up. And Sarkisian has emphasized, he's like, hey, listen, we haven't won anything. We haven't done anything. Our goal was not to appear in the Big 12 title game. Our goal was to win our first Big 12 title since 2009. And I mean, they stated that on day one, just saying, hey, we want to, we're leaving this conference and we need to do it right. Now, the second half of what I mentioned is the fan base here in Austin. They are, I don't want to say quite on, red alert, but they're very trepidatious, especially considering the way 3 out of the last 4 weeks have gone, in which they've had 20-point leads and only see those games end up really down to the wire. I mean, you take a look at the Houston game, and that came down to Jahdae Barron, who wasn't even supposed to play in that game, having to, make an emergency appearance in the second half and, have a last-minute breakaway of a pass that gave Houston was trying to drive to potentially tie the game on the road. And you take a look at, we know what happened against Kansas State. That would look like it was going to be, the team's really style points win, right? Make a pitch to the CFP committee and say, hey, we're going to beat a top 25 team by, 25, 30 points. All of a sudden, that's an overtime game that comes down to a last-minute stop. And then last week, against TCU, it looked like, Quinn Ewers comes back. They're going to run away with that one. And somewhere along the line, whether it was, TCU possessing the ball for 11 minutes in the third quarter, really prolonging that game, heading to the fourth quarter, they gave up that lead. And you can make the argument, guys. I mean, I don't think this is too much of a leap, that had they been able to put TCU away in the third quarter of that game and maybe, make that a 30-point lead, we don't see Jonathan Brooks in the fourth quarter of that game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for JB, it ends up being a season-ending injury for him.
Yeah, and so that was 2 kind of things you brought up there that I was interested in asking. We'll go with the first one is, so early in the season, health is obviously a different concern. Quinn Ewers is all the way healthy and the full roster is all the way healthy. And, Jahdae Barnes is already in there. But Texas is separating from teams. It is not close. And you look at like the Kansas game, it's sort of like, to me, that's like the quintessential 2023 Texas Longhorns game, which talented team, but you got, for Kansas, but Texas is better. And they kind of feel it out for a couple plays, couple quarters, and then all of a sudden they just run away and hide in the second half. And Quinn Ewers gets hurt. And I don't know if it's a confidence thing. From the outside in, I've watched the games on TV, but has it been just like a complacency in the second half, or has it been misexecution? Like, what has been the thing that's been because Quinn Ewers was back? It's not like you can blame it on the fact that you don't have your quarterback in there. Like, what's been the difference between the last month of the season and the first month and a half of the season?
Yeah, I'm going to try to, answer that backwards, right? So the last month of the season, it's been interesting to watch, guys. So here's the best way I can say it, because you talk about complacency, and it's funny you mentioned that, because Steve Sarkisian today, I asked him the question. This is a team that, if you just look at second halves alone, in 3 of those 4 games, the Houston game, the Kansas State game, and last week TCU, they've allowed 661 passing yards. That's in 6 quarters worth, just second halves alone, right? So I asked Sark, kind of piggybacking off of what he said to us post-game, I said, hey, is that a byproduct of you have a lead and essentially teams have to pass, right? So, in essence, you're going to rack up some pass yards, or what do you see there? And Sark said, hey, in his mind, it comes down to his defense. They need to keep a mentality, and this is his words here, of wanting to dominate and punish opponents for 4 quarters. You can't let up and maybe think, all right, I don't want to get beat deep, or, we're ahead, look at the scoreboard. All right, we don't have to play this as physical, right? Sark said we need guys from first quarter to fourth quarter making players have contested catches, contested throws, being physical, wanting to dominate and punish opponents. So that's one part of it. Now, as I mentioned, TCU in the third quarter last week's game had that 11-minute drive, right? So you couple that with the fact that Sark, they threw the ball 8 times and ran it 3 times in the third quarter on their 11 plays. They only had 11 plays in the third quarter, but that didn't net any points. So clearly they weren't necessarily milking a ton of clock in that respect. And with TCU's 11 minutes, they did put up points. I do think there's an argument that can be made. You can go back and even look at the TCU game, the Kansas State game as well. Some people would point to Steve Sarkisian, and maybe, in the Kansas State game specifically, they had an opportunity to go up 23-0. He went for it on 4th down in K-State territory, didn't get it, and that kind of sparked a little bit of a rally. I think some Longhorn fans would look at him as a play caller. And listen, some of it, and I'm just using what we've seen on our Horns 24/7 message boards. It's funny, guys. Versus Kansas State, they said, oh, well, Sark, why didn't he take the point? So I even had a fan to bring you guys in behind the curtain here a little bit. The way, or one of the ways we can get down to the field for post game is, you kind of jet out of the press box, so it takes you right onto the lower level at EKR Texas Memorial Stadium. So as we're walking down, we had a fan in the overtime say, media, ask Sark why he didn't take the points, right? So they wanted him to be conservative against K-State. But then you flip it to TCU and they're saying, oh, well, how come we weren't all gas, no brakes, right? So you can't win if you're Sark in one.
God bless fans.
But I do think it's been a combination of those things. And really quick to hit on the early season thing, that was weird because they would get off to these, slow starts and then be a second half team. And Sark used to say to us post games, we take pride in being a second half and a fourth quarter team, right? So it's been kind of, the kind of two evils, so to speak. I think in the first half of the season, a lot of that was this team establishing its offensive identity. You remember, CJ Baxter opened the season as the starting running back, right? So Jonathan Brooks wasn't even the guy for the first 2 weeks. I think that was part of it against Alabama and against Rice. And then against, Wyoming, it was a struggle for 3 quarters. I think that was, kind of finding their identity. So it's been, like I said, the two evils kind of deal with Texas this year, offensively speaking.
Yeah, the other kind of, you brought that up too. So like Jonathan Brooks wasn't the starter, then he kind of worked his way into being the starter. What does the Texas backfield look like? Because I think at Texas at their best, when they've been good, you look at like, oh, it's Colt McCoy and it's Ricky Williams and all these legendary skill players. It's because they have the best linemen in the country. When they're really good, they're pumping out, these enormous 340-pound defensive. Coburn last year is kind of a guy that comes to mind. Is just a solid guy. They just have like 9 of those guys. Well, when Texas is at their best, they're able to just kind of FU run the ball. And it's no matter who the quarterback is, what they're doing. Well, Texas, without Jonathan Brooks, they still have that offensive line. But I mean, if they haven't been able to seal games in the last few weeks, whether that's by play calling or execution, what does the running back room look like, or the offense look like, without their bell cow behind or beside Quinn Ewers?
It's funny you mentioned the offensive line, because there's no doubt this is a talented offensive line. Christian Jones, I mean, in his 6th year, he's really seeming as if he's actualized that potential. I've seen a lot of people, whether it's Jim Nagy over at the Senior Bowl and some others, really saying that he, kind of has an opportunity to rise up draft boards as a right tackle. Kelvin Banks Jr. was, an all Big 12 performer at left tackle. The interesting thing is
giant human.
Listen, Kelvin, we get him on Mondays. He's a massive human, guys.
Giant human being.
But the interior of the offensive line has been interesting. Cole Hudson was a starter at guard. He's been banged up. He's been, kind of in and out of the lineup. DJ Campbell, 6'3", 345 pounds at right guard, has taken that spot. But he's a first-time starter, so he's been kind of, feeling his way around the offensive line. You got Jake Majors, who got banged up a little bit at center. He's just getting healthy again. And Hayden Connor as well at left guard. So the interior of the offensive line has been interesting. At times, they've had failures, especially in short yardage, guys. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers on me, but I've written about it at Horns 24/7 on the website about some of this team's short yardage struggles when you have those moments, guys, when everyone in the stadium knows you got to run it, right? Right. 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1.
Or there's 3.5 minutes to go in the game. The stuff where it's, I know I'm running, I'm running, stop it.
They haven't performed well, guys. I mean, the numbers get skewed a little bit because Sark is so aggressive on 4th down. Sometimes they get conversions that way. But, again, they've really kind of struggled on those power leverage moments. So to transition to the running back room, what's made the Texas rushing attack look so good, quite frankly, is Jonathan Brooks. And this is kind of, when I've mentioned it and compared him to Bijan Robinson, it's upset some of the fan base. But if you look at all the numbers, guys, and even the advanced metrics, he's performing at the same pace that Bijan Robinson was last year, even the year before, in terms of his explosive runs and, quite frankly, the ability to make the defenders miss. He's, I believe, 2nd or 3rd in the nation, according to Pro Football Focus, in missed tackles forced. And that was the thing that separated him from CJ Baxter. When you look at CJ, and I'll be curious to see how he looks on Saturday, 6'1", 218 pounds, you see the explosiveness and the little spurts that, Texas and Steve Sarkisian gives us as far as practice viewing windows during fall camp. You see an explosive big back, which just reminds you of Bijan Robinson. But what was missing was the ability to make the first guy miss. And at this level, as you guys know, it's very rare you're going to get clean all the way through, right, in terms of run play. You got to be able to make a defender miss, whether it's that first guy or someone at the second level. And CJ wasn't doing that early on. Then he got banged up, had the injuries. He's come on a little bit in being the backup running back. So I'm really interested to see how he's kind of grown and matured in the last 8-9 weeks of being the backup. And for all accounts, Steve Sarkisian said, hey, he's one of the hardest workers on the team. He's really, a mature back, not a true freshman. So we'll see. I mean, again, there was a reason why this guy was the starting running back out of camp. We'll have to see if he can kind of actualize that on Saturday.
Who's going to be another guy? Because running back's a position where you can't take 100% of snaps or you're going to die. So who's the next or other guys they're going to be in? Okay, so Savion Red was kind of filling that short yardage role. I mean, I would tell you, transfer.
No. Savion is a guy who's redshirt freshman. I would tell Iowa State fans, look for him in the Wildcat. When they do go Wildcat short yardage, Savion Red, a former prep quarterback, so he kind of has experience in that realm. He's going to be that short yardage guy. And the other two guys are, Jaden Blue, who's a really interesting player, and that he's a young guy and another underclassman as well. When he's touched the ball, it's mainly been in blowout situations, so he doesn't have any carries in any real high leverage type of situations, but he's looked explosive. I mean, he's broken a 30, 40-yard touchdown. I think he had that one against BYU, if memory serves me correct, late in that ball game. So he's a very explosive back, kind of similar to, I'd say, JB, Jonathan Brooks in that regard. And then Keelan Robinson, for the most part, has been the 3rd down back. When you've seen him, it's been using his hands out of the backfield or maybe kind of a change of pace guy. So I'd say look for all 3 of those guys. That's not really going to be, one guy in specificity.
So I know that Quinn Ewers had gotten hurt, a few weeks ago, and then he was out for a couple weeks. And Malik Murphy came in and did a good job filling in for him. I didn't get to watch the TCU game at all. Obviously his injury was, an AC joint sprain to his right shoulder. Did you notice that last game, did he look like normal Quinn Ewers, or do you think there's any kind of lingering still going on with that injury? Because an AC joint injury is not
especially for a quarterback.
And to your throwing shoulder, that's not a fun injury to have. No injuries are fun to have, but that's not a fun injury to have.
I really enjoy this sprained ankle. This is nice. I like it.
No, right? That's funny you said. But no, guys, you talk about the AC joint. I mean, by all accounts, he was ahead of schedule in his recovery. And TCU, they are a team that allows field access pregame. So we went down and watched, and Quinn looked healthy during warmups. He had one moment during the TCU game in which he looked like he was kind of, at least from our vantage point up in the press box, maybe kind of favoring that side. But, when we talked to him post-game, he said he was completely fine. I will say we didn't get him today for player availability, but maybe that had more to do with a class schedule than anything else. But no, I mean, Quinn, the only noticeable difference, I would say, in last week's game as compared to maybe what we've seen during the year is Quinn talked a lot during the lead up to the season about his decision to really clean up his diet and drop from 215 to even, down to 190 pounds where he's playing now. And I even said during, the early part of the year that can a 190 pound quarterback survive the entire year? Obviously we see, Quinn did get banged up, but the one area where he believes dropping the weight has helped him is scrambling. There's been several times this year when 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, right when it looks as if an opposing defense is really kind of getting some momentum against the offense, hasn't backed when a 3rd and long. Quinn hasn't been afraid to, run, scramble, and pick up the first down. And we even saw in the Houston game where there was some speculation that the play maybe he got hurt on was him dropping his shoulder and trying to run to a first down. Quinn says that it actually didn't happen on that play. It happened on a sack earlier on that drive. So we did not see him use his legs at all. Again, maybe part of that was by design, given the fact that he does have the AC joint injury, but that's the only thing I would say was the difference, is that we didn't see him even look to run at all, which throughout the year, again, in certain situations, especially in, timely 3rd downs, he's done that this year.
Yeah, and I think that's, coming off an injury. So I play running back, fullback, and you get frozen shoulder, sprained ankle, back injury, neck injury, broken wrist, all that kind of stuff. And it takes you a little bit, even if you're physically ready, it cleared and it's okay, and you're not going to hurt yourself if you make full contact, it changes it. It takes a little while to mentally be okay with all right, if I put my shoulder down, I'm not going to hurt this thing again. So I think, it might be something like that where he is ahead of schedule, but a little tentative still. One thing that he did change from last year is the mullet, which is nice.
Is it nice though?
That thing was just.
Mullets aren't supposed to be pretty, man. They're supposed to be just disgusting.
Yeah, well, mission accomplished. So
it's a bad thing you let it go.
So you mentioned that you joined this past summer. So I guess you didn't get to watch last year's team. So last year's team, they kind of faltered later in the year, and the knock, and this is from an Iowa State fan's perspective, and so I was 2-2 against Texas, and when in teams that you could beat, it was because they would start pissing and moaning at each other, and it started to become a little bit of internal, I don't want to do this, and I'm here, whatever. I'm here for me. I'm not here for us. And that's sort of what Texas in the past couple of years has kind of come down to. It's like that rant that happened actually the last time they were in Ames. They got run all over by Iowa State. The defensive line coach just absolutely chewed them out. From there to here, I guess, I don't know if it's, again, you weren't necessarily there, but in conversations with the team and other guys, what has been the biggest difference between last year and this year in whether it's execution or just togetherness, or what's different between the last couple of years and this year?
I apologize for coming on a podcast and going into journalist mode. Maybe it's because of the fact that I just left Presser an hour ago. I'm going to answer your question, but I have to ask a follow-up to that. So in your years playing against Texas, did you notice that, or was that just
100%?
Okay.
100%. So you can see, let's say you bust off a 7-yard run on first down, or you're blocking somebody. Instead of being let's say Grant was a defensive end and naturally built like one. And, he's supposed to fit in the B gap, but he doesn't quite get there. And the linebacker is supposed to fit in the C gap, and, linebacker has to pick up to the defensive end. You'd see him kind of, instead of being a pat in the back of hey, let's go, you can get it. It's sort of like a shove to the shoulder, being come on, dude. You'd see that sort of start to happen. And that was one of those things of, we know we got you when that starts to happen. So it was a real thing that they would start kind of pissing and moaning at each other. And I think when we beat them in DKR, I think we had like 7 sacks or something like that, just because of stuff like that in the offensive line.
Okay, so I promise I would answer your question 1,000%, even without being around this team last year, right? This being my first year covering the team. The first thing, my first assignment covering Texas for CBS and 24/7 was Big 12 Media Days. And I asked Jordan Whittington, a veteran, highly respected guy on this team. I said, what's different about this team? And he said, man, just to be honest with you, we really rock with each other, not just inside the facility, but outside the facility. And being a new guy on the beat, right? This is my 7th year covering college football in some form or fashion. I'm not going to lie. You hear that so often, maybe you take it for granted, right? But they've been consistent to that message to the point where I actually just wrote on that. Was it yesterday? The days all run together. I believe it was yesterday. I talked about the culture, right? I think my counterpart Chip Brown on the site, wrote about the fact that he said that Texas keeps pointing to his culture, and he asked, is that going to be enough to finish the job? And I kind of gave the flip side, which is the culture is making the difference. It's kind of to your point about, these are games that, regardless of the fact that they give up or have given up some second half leads, the difference between them holding on when it matters to win the game versus losing has been the culture. And I'm just taking that from their own words. Jahdae Barron, Jalen Ford, Jordan Whittington. I mean, the list goes on and on. All of the guys who have been on this team for at least 3 years or more have said the difference is we don't just watch film together inside the facility. I call the guys over to the apartment, and we got, a little, movie room downstairs. We watch film together. We really hang out with each other. We enjoy each other's company on and off the field. So for Longhorn fans, as cliche and maybe as, boring of an answer as that is for the layperson, people who aren't really around this program daily, it's the truth. So that's why I asked the question. It's interesting to hear you say that from an opponent's perspective, because, even Jalen Ford said that, sometimes a guy might miss a tackle or miss, a gap or, miss a run fit. And you start looking at each other, it's like, yo, what happened? As opposed to, as you said, picking that guy up and being like, yo, next play, we'll get it. So that's real.
What I'm kind of going to be looking for on Saturday is, obviously we've talked about Texas, kind of losing some of their mojo in the second half. Well, Iowa State has been a second half team, especially under Coach Campbell. So I'm curious to see if Texas still is kind of lethargic in the second half, if Iowa State's able to.
It's not going to be as cold as I want, though, to really make the second half. I mean, I wanted it to be. I mean, to be fair,
I'm sure when Texas
you're a Florida
saw
guy, you're living in Texas now.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be like 15 and snowy. That would be extra plus for us up here.
So it's funny you mentioned that, because I went to grad school in Chicago.
Okay,
so I'm
you've done
familiar
cold. You've done cold
with the cold. However, that question was asked to several Longhorns today, right? And then finally, one of the media guys kind of laughed at like the 4th time a player was asked about being cold, and it was noticeable. And like, someone asked why you're laughing. It was like, the high is going to be like 58 that day, right? It's not going to be that cold.
No. Yeah, that's
so,
short weather.
To your point.
So this is a special teams kind of, centered podcast. So Texas has a history of, great kickers. Justin Tucker was there when we played. Nick Rose was great. Obviously, Cameron Dicker. Can you touch on, how is Texas's kicker and, I guess, punter this year so far?
Ryan Sanborn's been awesome. I mean, the Stanford transfer, he punted for 4 years at Stanford. He's last check, he was 7th or 8th in the nation in yards per punt. It's around 47 per game. So, Sanborn's been great all year. Bert Auburn is a guy who, listen, I don't know if you've ever seen Bert Auburn's hair, but that's made him a, fan favorite, because he's got, the long kind of curly hair that comes out. We actually had him for media availability today, and he was saying he needs a Head and Shoulders deal. So there's that. Kind of funny, but
Jeff probably hates his hair.
Listen,
hey, I got you.
I'm saying because you're not a fan of the mullet, so just
No, I'm not a fan of the mullet, because
unless you're high and tight. Jeff's like, no,
there's no good mullet. Like
mullets aren't supposed to be good, Jeff. They're mullets.
Listen, I'm with you, because there are 5 members of the media corps here who are bald, including myself.
Hey,
and at a certain point in time, we're like, listen, enough with the hair questions, all right? Because Bert got asked about that, and so did Michael Taft. But anyhow, no, Auburn is a really reliable kicker. I mean, even when he went through a bit of a struggle between the Wyoming and Kansas games, he had a stretch there where he missed a few kicks. And Steve Sarkisian stood by him and said, hey, matter of factly, Bert Auburn is our kicker, right? And I mean, Bert came out and said a few weeks back that meant the world to him, because as a special teams player and as a kicker, so much of the battle is confidence, right? So if Steve Sarkisian had answered that question in any other way, besides matter of factly, Bert Auburn is our kicker, maybe that builds a little bit of hesitancy in him, excuse me. But no, Auburn's rebounded really well. I'd say the biggest knock on him is, I'd say anything 45 and plus. I think Bert today said anything inside of 50, he feels confident, but anything 45 plus can be a little bit shaky. But for the most part, very accurate kicker. And like I said, he's rebounded really well over the past few weeks.
And I know that Xavier Worthy is, early on in the season, at least I knew he was one of the best punt returners in the country. Does he do kickoff returns as well for you guys?
No. And it's interesting. I wouldn't mind seeing X out there. Steve Sarkisian has said that he's wanted to see more out of the kick return game, but no, it typically is Keelan Robinson, although there was a switch last week in the TCU game for the first time this year. We saw true freshman DeAndre Moore back there on kick returns, but no, it's usually him or sometimes I see a little bit of Savion Red and others, but no, it's usually Keelan Robinson for the most part had been, and Jordan Whittington as well sometimes was back there, but Keelan Robinson had been the primary kick return. And I'll be interested to see if Keelan is back this week, because again, he'd been the primary guy all season long. He didn't appear at all last week. Didn't seem as if it was injury related because he dressed.
Little doghouse situation?
What's that?
Little doghouse situation?
I don't know, because Keelan is one of the most respected guys on the team. I know that sounds cliche, but Sark, preaches about this guy being one of the best gunners in the nation. Sark says that he has the two best gunners in the nation, and Keaton Crawford and Keelan Robinson. So he's never hesitated to put those guys out there. So I think for whatever reason Keelan just didn't play, not even on special teams as well. So I don't know if it was a doghouse situation or something internal, but I'd be interested to see if we can Keelan this week, because he has been the primary kick returner.
Yeah, I feel like Xavier Worthy, to me, he's got a lot of CeeDee Lamb vibes, and I know like Longhorn fans don't might not love that too much, but he is so like he's a beanpole, but he's so much stronger than his frame suggests, and he's also just one of those guys where it's like, hey, go do something with this ball,
Devontae Smith, if you will.
A little bit, yeah. A little Slim Reapery, but it doesn't. It feels like if they were to need something, they make it to somehow make it to the college football playoff, and they're down 6 with 4 to play, and they're getting the ball, throw him back there. Like it feels like one of those situations where you just need to get him the ball. But right now, it feels like he's too important to the offense to do that with. But okay, have you traveled with the team? Like traveled to away games,
yes,
covering him?
Yes.
What has been other than the Cotton Bowl? Because that's just absolute just. Powder keg. Yeah. What has been the environments? Because I would imagine you're getting. I say you like you're officially part of the Texas team, but like Texas is getting everybody's not just their best shot; it's their maddest shot. Just the pissed off Hornets. You kick the Hornets' nest. Has that been like an us against the world type feel for the team, and has it affected them at any point?
Listen, despite the fact that, contrary to some people's belief, I do not work for the University of Texas or any school I cover. It's funny when I always get that. Like, I know you don't work for such and such anymore. It's like, I never did. But no, we're around the team daily. So you hear the players talk about during the week, but on game day, it's noticeable. If I have on, my Texas, I think I got my Texas lanyard right here, which sometimes I have to bring with me on the road. And you're walking to a stadium to pick up, my road credential. You hear it from fans. Even being down there again, the games that we've had field access, TCU, Houston are the two. You hear fans every time they touch the field, whether it's warm-ups and t-shirts and shorts, coming back out with pads, or taking the field, right for kickoff. You hear it and you feel it. And I don't know. I guess this will be the first time. Yeah, we weren't down the field pregame for Bama, but you felt it for Alabama for sure. Even being around campus and Bryant-Denny, they wanted that one. So, this will be the first time as far as a Big 12 opponent that we've been outside the state of Texas. I don't know if it was, maybe heightened. I definitely think with Baylor, it was heightened. At Waco's a 90-minute drive. So, those people definitely want to give it to them. And same thing with Houston. As well, and definitely TCU. So yes, we felt it, and I'll be interested to get to, Jack Trice and see what the
it's going to be
there.
Heated. The amount of I just from we're not affiliated with Iowa State either, and so the thing that's interesting about the fan base is it sort of feels like, well, we can bleep this out, but like, you want to leave? We'll get the fuck out then. Like that's sort of the way that the attitude is for the fan base towards Texas. So then whenever that person is on the other side of that, and you get the chance to communicate that to them. It's the last time, like, that sort of feels like that we as Iowa State, players then had always been like an underneath, little brother. And by the time Iowa State has beaten Texas 3 out of 4 games, well, then they're leaving. And so it's one of those things that this will be, I think this is going to be as irritated of a stadium as I probably will expect to experience outside of a Cyhawk game, probably ever. So like, it's going to be hot when Texas comes in.
I'll give you this really quick. I mean, just the TCU game. I don't know if you guys have seen the picture on Twitter where AD Mitchell, is catching the touchdown pass, and he's got 6 middle fingers, clad in purple, right, in his face. So it's real.
You brought up a good point that I didn't realize until you brought up that Texas has not left the state of Texas for a Big 12 game until this one, and then their next 2 are both in the state of Texas too. That is absolutely wild.
Well,
I'm kind of mad the Big 12 just kind of.
I mean, on the flip side of that, Houston. I mean, that Houston game is only close because Houston gets to take out all decades of pent up rage against Texas. And TCU, it's we haven't seen you for a long time, but get on out of here. And Baylor, Southwestern Conference, and we've been with you forever. Get out of here. So I don't think it's necessarily too much of a help that they haven't been able to leave the state because what are they going to Cincinnati, Provo, Morgantown? Like those Morgantown would be a little mad, but like. There's not a lot of irritation outside of maybe Manhattan. I feel like Manhattan, Stillwater, and Ames are the places that would legitimately have a amount of explosive pent-up aggression.
Eric,
as a UCF alum, I might throw Orlando in there too. I'm just kidding.
Eric, have you ever been to a game in Jack Trice Stadium before?
I listen. I'm excited because I never have been to. I have a buddy of mine from college. His brother went to Iowa State, and he used to tell me all these like great going to Iowa State frat party stories. So I'm pretty excited because I've heard that, it's a pretty unique environment in Ames. So I'm pretty excited to get up there.
Yeah. If you get a chance to, before the game, just, walk around tailgating, it's all, big old parking lots around and a lot of tailgating going on, and you're in for a treat. Senior night games are always special in Ames too. Weird things can happen. But it should be a fun environment.
And I would say the one unique thing, I mean, other than just, it's Jack Trice, but like first touchdown in the second half, just stay in your seat. Don't go get a drink. It's the whitest thing that we could possibly ever do, but it's Juicy Wiggle, which is like a bad techno song.
Okay.
But the entire stadium loses their minds, and it's because
so
you could,
stupid, but
it's so stupid, but it's so fun. You get 63,000 people that are doing the same dance the entire 2 minutes of that song, but like. I mean, it's corny. I would like to see something a little bit more effort or energy, but Juicy Wiggle, man, when it comes on, stadium lights up. So first touchdown in the second half, just be ready for the Juicy Wiggle.
Is it wider than Sweet Caroline? Because that's like my barometer.
Oh boy.
Well, we play that at the end of the game.
We got both.
Yeah, so if Iowa State wins, they'll play at the end of the game. So I guess, fill in your bingo card. The last thing I'll say to Eric, that this is a special teams, as I said, centered podcast. Let's talk about the Texas special teams coach just for a second.
Okay.
If we're allowed to go down that route.
You can go down it. I can't promise you what answer I'll give, but you're more. It's your guys' show.
I was just gonna say, have you met his wife and or her pet monkey? That is a fact, right? That's true story.
I was not here for the wife or the pet monkey, and I have not met. To the best of my knowledge, although we do the way we enter in for Texas post games, we pass families all the time. I may have been in the same building as her, but I have never met a wife. Or
if it was a Saturday night, she probably wasn't in that building.
The only animal I've met on the beat is Bevo. That is it.
There we go.
Thank you for putting up with that question. I'm
you.
both.
You're a good sport.
I'm sorry for that, and also thank you,
John Bianco, Thomas Stepp, and all the folks there at the Texas Communications. There you go. Can't pull my hand.
They won't listen to it.
We can cut that if we need to.
Yeah, we sure can.
No, you're good.
Well, that's all I've got from it, Jeff. You got anything?
Yeah, I think that was it. I mean, thanks for coming on. Yeah, so if you want any place to eat, any place to go, or something up once you get up to Ames, hit us up. We're happy to help.
I will take any and all recommendations. I'm actually heading up on Thursday, so I'll be in Des Moines Thursday and heading over to Ames.
Ooh.
So I'll take any and all recommendations.
I would say if you want the closest thing to Texas barbecue, What's Ya Smokin'? It's in Luther.
It's in Luther, 45-minute drive. Great.
It's I say just outside of Ames, but it's not. It's on the way to Ames. You kind of take the back roads. If you're flying down, I don't know if that's interstate, whatever it's on, you'll miss it. But it'll be on the left-hand side if you're going, north to Ames.
It's the middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere.
Absolute middle of nowhere.
That's probably closest to Texas barbecue they'll find in Iowa.
No
that's
doubt.
good.
All right.
Good stuff.
Awesome, fellas. Appreciate it.
We appreciate your time. Thanks again for coming on.
Anytime, fellas. Appreciate it.
Well, that was the Goldfinch Athletics interview. I mean, thanks to Eric for hopping on. It's 247 Horns. Boy, that was it. I'm proud of you for asking that question because it was on a lot of people's minds. But I mean, God bless him for being a sport to actually answer that question.
I had to save it to the end too because he hung up as soon as we were done recording, and I'm pretty sure he would have hung up had I asked within the first 2 minutes. So
good information though, like super helpful. They're
What's
super
information?
useful. Like especially a lot of stuff about Jonathan Brooks and who's going to be filling in. I don't know. I'm excited for it.
I apologize to him though if that question did offend him. Was not my intention. We're special teams though. We're a special teams podcast. It's an elephant in the room, if you will.
Meant to be fun.
Sure is.
Okay.
So
anyway, we're going to be back next. Well, you guys are going to be back next week. I will be sitting the next week or two out.
what are you gonna be, a dad or something?
Yeah, got the eviction notice for the kid scheduled for Sunday night going into Monday. So unless she hatches sooner, you guys will be on your own for at least a little bit. So hopefully be able to enjoy a Texas defeat.
Yeah, send those Longhorns out on a loss. We'll bring in some fun guests. So Aiden may hop on and join me, and who knows, maybe he'll get an hour at Grand Scripes.
Great scripts.
That's all we got for you guys today, though. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners who are still listening. And as always, remember, adopt, do not shop.